Okay, so at this point I've finished the work I need to do on the tank. We'll see that when we get around the other side. I've glued the original fabric back down to the ribs where it was glued before. Stitz does not say to glue it to the ribs. They say glue it to the leading edge, trailing edge, and major structural members, but not the ribs. But the manual for the construction of this aircraft, Merlin GT, says to glue it to the ribs and put rivets in the top. Other similar aircraft, Avid Flyers, some of the kit boxes, people get away with just gluing. So what I did, I glued it, and then I'll put the rivets in top and bottom like it was originally, and that should be pretty good. Put the anti-chafing tape in place where I thought I needed it. We'll show you that too. I've marked off 1 inch from the edge of where I stripped the coating, and I've got the fabric trimmed to line up with that edge, to that line approximately. That way I can glue this down, and I can put the tape right against that edge there, and the ridge left over from where I stripped the paint, it'll disappear along with the pink, into the pinking on the edge of the tape. So that's all set up. I got the slits cut here for this. It's wrapped around over the trailing edge. I'm going to actually glue the trailing edge on the other side first. I'll come over and glue this. Then I'll glue this side here, because this is a kind of funny one where I've got this flap, and that's hard to get that to glue well, so I want to be able to get at both sides. So I'll glue that up, and then we'll glue it along this ridge here, and then we'll shrink it. Okay, we're almost ready to start gluing here. 2 things real quick before I start. Ideally this stuff should have been conversion coated and primed before we put fabric on it. Thought about it a little bit, but since the whole rest of the wing is just glued to bare aluminum, didn't see much point in trying to do just this little bit here. Save that for when I do a complete recover. The other thing, one of the reasons I had to, or I chose to take this all apart and replace all this fabric, was due to the fuel leaks. The biggest problem I had was around the sending unit. When it's full and the airplane's sitting on the ground, the tail's on the ground, the filler is a lot higher up than the actual sending unit here, so there's actual liquid fuel up against this, and it's really not designed for that, I don't think. And you get seepage around the screws, because those are just threaded holes in the top of the tank. There's a ring welded in, and it would just kind of seep past the threads and that, so just changing the gasket and stuff didn't do you any good. Tried a couple different things, and a little leakage around that thread too, but what worked out for me was this Loctite 567. It's Teflon plus the thread locking stuff. That's done the job for me. Really did a nice job of sealing up all of that, eliminating the leaks. So hopefully now I can replace the fabric on the bottom and it'll stay replaced, or stay nice I should say. So let's get going. Stitz tells you to use a gallon can with a cutout. I like these 1 quart cans. You can buy them empty at hardware stores. There's my poly-tac in there, and clothespins. So I'm just going to brush it on and press it down with my gloved finger. Probably all you see is me, right? Move over a bit. And you work in fairly short sections, because it does dry pretty fast. If you have problems, you can always apply a little MEK and loosen it back up and do over.
One advantage with stuff is the potential for a do-over. We got a little chafing tape here where where I think it's appropriate.
Okay, so back on the bottom of the wing, I'm going to glue this down here and bring it down as I go. I think this it's cool enough in here. I can probably get this whole thing in one shot. We'll find out. Fairly long stretch of fabric to put on down at once, but what we got to lose, right? It's only an airplane.
Move down and be wrinkled because I don't want wrinkles. I don't want wrinkles. There we go. Maybe a little lumps we can work out with the tip of the iron. I'm going to let that dry for just a minute.
Now I can start working my way down this edge, starting at the top. Down, and this is where I wanted to be able to get at, so I can reach back here and press this into the fabric. And get all the way out to my line. Oops. Don't do this on your living room carpet, it's kind of grippy. Laid plans. You want to make sure that you got enough on there that it essentially wets out the Dacron. Now I got a little extra length here. I'm going to trim this off, and we're using straight scissors because you know, that's what the manual says to use under a overlapped tape seam. When you have exposed edges, you want to pink it. So it's this edge here. You don't want to come back and put glue over the top, because that'll dry first and inhibit the drying of the stuff underneath, at least according to the manual. But I don't think there's a problem with tucking the brush under there and wetting it a bit. So as I come around the bottom here, I got some challenges in terms of fittings. Just need to kind of do my best to cut it where it needs to be cut and not anymore. Now if there was a lot of curve here, we'd have to do some heat shrinking and pulling and stuff to get this to fit. I think I can just glue it. Okay, so calibrating the iron here, I've got it set for my 350 degree point, and you can see it's not too far off. If I hit the maximum, I'll see it went up to 352.9. minimum 342.7. The book says 3 plus or minus 10, so I'm well within that. So I'm happy with that calibration, but I do want to mention when you first turn the iron on until it stabilizes, this thing went up to 395 on the first heat up cycle and cool down. So, you know, that would have been hot enough to damage the fabric. Anything above 375, you're starting to talk about permanent fabric damage. You know, the polyester deteriorates, so it needs to turn on and stabilize for a bit before you actually start using it. And certainly any time you start a new job, going through this calibration routine, this is just the 350 point. That's the most critical, you know, because you don't want to get above 375. 360 is as far as I'd want to go. I've got just on the cool side of that, and I'm happy with that. So that's definitely, you know, something you want to do right away. Okay. So with the iron set down below 250, I can go over these seams, like there's a wrinkle right there. Let's see, is that in the, yeah. And work that with the tip of the iron, and it softens up the glue and it shrinks the fabric just a little. And with a little effort, I can work that out. So this point, what we're doing at this point is trying to work out any lumps, wrinkles, bubbles, things like that in the seams. We're not shrinking the fabric yet. That comes later. I'll get the seams cleaned up, and then I'll put the fabric on the top. And at that point, we'll say goodbye to everything that all the work I just did inside, like fabricating those new fuel lines. That's one of the beauties of home building, right? You put all time and effort into doing a nice job on some part or another that's hopefully forever hidden from view. So this will get real boring real fast, so I'll shut the camera down. I think you get the idea. You can get some pretty good sized lumps worked down and squished out, and that wrinkles didn't quite go away. Let's keep on with the heat just under 250. 250 is where you start to soften the, anything above 250 you'll undo the poly-tac. Okay, we're back again. I took the iron and smoothed out the lumps and wrinkles here and on the back side. Certainly don't want to leave them here and then cover them, because the more layers you put on, the harder they are to fix, and once you paint it, the worse they look. You know, they always look worse with paint than they do when they're raw. But now we're ready to cover the top. This piece is pretty much trimmed to size. We can take one last look inside, make sure, you know, you didn't forget anything. The wires come out the side. Those are all tight. The plug is in there. That's on. Okay, I think I got everything I need to do. I don't want to be taking this back off again. And we're just going to do the same thing I did on the bottom. I'll cement the top, and I'll cement this edge so that I can get in here and support this little flap, get it to glue good. And then, I guess that went out of the camera. Okay, but we'll be doing the same thing. I'm not going to film all of it because it gets boring, you know. Maybe I'll leave the camera on for a while and fast forward it. Oh, and one other thing. My brush here, I didn't clean it. It hardened up while I was screwing around cutting the fabric and stuff and ironing. But I just stuck it into the glue pot and kind of worked it for a little bit, and after just a pretty short period of time, it's, you know, the MEK and the poly-tac softens it up, and away we go. So take a clothespin out, and as far as overlap is concerned, if I was covering a wing from scratch, the rule is I need 1 inch of overlap on this. You know, and if my leading edge were narrower, I'd have to wrap it around. But this, or not leading edge, trailing edge. But the trailing edge here is 2 inches wide, so it gives me a 2-inch overlap, which is also the overlap we need according to the repair instructions. So, do I need 2 inches, or can I get by with 1? I don't know. I'll go with 2 and I'm safe, right? So I got 2 inches there. And then I'll tape that when we get to the taping part. Okay, now it's time to get the fabric down around the leading edge. Back here it's not so bad. It's a pretty straight profile. But in this area, see, we got a lot of extra material. And since this is a repair, if this was new construction, you know, I only need 1 inch on the root rib. Of course, I've got the rib up here, it's glued there. I'm going to go for 2 inches of overlap just to have it. So I got my iron, it's been on for a little bit, temperature stabilized. I should be able to just kind of iron this down. You know, like here it takes next to nothing to get it to lay flat. And as we get down here, we get down, we'll have to do a little more shrinking and stretching and pulling and screwing around. You know, you can pull it and stretch it on the bias a bit as you heat it. It gives you a little bit more. Just going to flatten it first. Intelligent person would probably be wearing a glove. You don't burn your hand, right? Fortunately, that doesn't apply to me. Tugging and ironing, essentially distorting the fabric, shrinking too, a little of both. A little wrinkle here. Work that out. Probably would have helped if I left a little extra fabric on there. I have to iron right up to my stupid finger, right? we're getting to the point where it's, you know, at least a couple inches of it is laying pretty flat. I don't need to go all the way to the edge. So there's the fabric flattened down. It looks pretty good. So the next step is I'm going to zoom you in here a little bit, and I can see some bubbles here that we need to flatten out. I'm just getting here my 225 iron and just work it a bit. It softens up the poly-tac underneath, and I could use my little trim iron, I guess. It might even make more sense. But this has got a little more heat capacity, so when I put it on the aluminum, it doesn't cool it down instantly. And that just flattened those right out. Some is inevitable here because you've got that cross piece. I did find out what that's for. That's so you can put a metal cover over the fuel tank instead of fabric, but I'm not planning on doing that. I don't want to open it up again. I want to go flying. It's more fun than playing with irons and stinky stuff. And I just flattened that out quite nicely. Okay, so I'm going to go around the seams just like that, looking for any lumps and things, because as I mentioned before, it's easier to fix now than it will be after. And then I believe the next step, the next step is the 250-degree iron. Okay, so here we are, ready for the big step here, shrinking it. Now you can see this is not, it's not tight. It's supposed to shrink about 10% with the 250-degree iron, and that's, you know, a couple inches over here, 2.5 inches, and I don't have that much slack in it, but we'll see what happens. I'll put it in the middle, and I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, but you can see it kind of bunching up around the iron. See it kind of bunching there if I just hold it for a second. As it shrinks, that crease has disappeared there. I'll just keep working my way outward. And the iron's right at my 250-degree point. Tank underneath. Those bars on the tank are right here. I tapered the ends of them and also covered them with anti-chafe tape. This is a little bit weird here because I got the lump from the fuel strainer, or sump rather. Get in here. There we go. Just a little bit of a wrinkle there. No, there's some I missed. I'll go back and get those. Okay, well, Fred Sanford, or Red Fox, playing Fred Sanford, was always famous for his "this is the big one" routine. And then when he actually did have a heart attack, of course, everybody thought it was his routine, but it's beside the point. So this is a big one, 350 degrees. This is going to be really boring because it doesn't actually look any different after you've ironed it at 350 than it did at 250. The thing to be careful of, two things. One is make sure you actually iron the whole thing, because it's easy to miss a spot because it doesn't look any different whatsoever. You do get a little steam coming off the fabric. So yeah, it's easy to miss a spot, and you certainly don't want to get over onto the cemented seams because you'll just loosen up the glue and the whole thing will pop and you'll be done. You know, you don't want to do that. Pretty much all there is to it. The Stitz manual recommends doing this twice. Make sure you don't miss a spot, because like I said, it doesn't look different. All it really does is get a little tighter. And if you get much above 350, the fabric just starts to loosen again instead of tighten.